All right. Thanks, everybody, for sticking around. I know it's kind of lunchtime, so we're going to have some fun in here. First, I want to lead off with a little bit about my background. I know some of today is around talent, and my background is quite different than many of you in the room, and especially many of the folks that are entering into some of the other sessions right now. So I started out at Staples, and Staples in the US, they have a B2B division, and I was selling their office supply packages door to door, basically, to buyers, office supply managers, office managers. Cut my teeth there, and then we went to actually found our own regional marketplace, and that took me to walking the halls of Amazon, of eBay, of Walmart, as I was representing at that time their largest strategic partner and channel partner at that time. It was very interesting, very insightful as I listened to Amazon business leaders figure out what they were going to do, what their strategy was, and how they were going to manage their suppliers and their retail business. So today you're going to be learning about some of that. Now heading up the supplier development for Tradeshift and our B2B platform for marketplaces. So as we jump in, I've got 4 fun questions for us. They're quite simple, so don't get nervous. Again, I know it's lunchtime. This is an obvious one. Raise your hand, if you will, if you expect to be buying more from online marketplaces in the future. Of course, obvious, right? Okay, of course we are, but do we ask ourselves why? Why do we plan on buying more from these marketplaces? Now, I like to study psychology on the side because all of these disruptions are also disrupting our brains and our emotions. So, but this one's pretty easy. The reason why is that we're human, and we are hackers by trade. For thousands of years, we create shortcuts, and I view marketplaces as a hack. It's a human hack. It's a shortcut. Whether we're buying supplies for our homes or our companies, marketplaces are just easy, right? Of course. I see a lot of nodding heads. Now, raise your hand if you are already enabling marketplaces and outsourcing your supplier management to marketplaces. A couple folks fighting a cold, so I'm going to get some water. Okay, a couple folks, just to be expected. Now, this is my favorite question. Who doesn't love buying from Amazon? I mean, seriously, it's a global phenomenon. But is it a love? Is it a hate? Is it a love-hate relationship? I mean, for me, I'm incredibly conflicted, but I just keep buying. And I think a lot of you just keep buying. Why do we keep buying? All the leaders that have come before me today, speaking of the complexities, the need for transformation, because our buyers, our users internally continuously leak out of our procurement systems, and they're shopping on Amazon. And we know it's a problem. Well, what do we do about it? I mean, how can we not keep buying? Fast ERP setup, super easy. Endless suppliers, endless selection. Shipping, free shipping, fast and free. I mean, quite frankly, the most amazing customer experience I've ever had with any company. And what's perceived to be low prices. Is it really lower prices? I mean, has anybody done a study on that? If you haven't, you probably should. The reality is supply chain management is incredibly complex. And what these companies, what I'm going to be referring to today as retail marketplaces, have become the masters at removing the complexity to the user. They put it behind these big walls and they build moats around it. And for us, as buyers, it's the easiest thing in the world. Just keep buying. That's why we keep buying. But the real question for today as we set this up is, wouldn't you rather actually benefit from that type of a solution, but control it yourself? Not lose all of the control, but control it yourself. So we're going to get into that. First, we're going to start with research. Partner with CNBC, Catalyst, and we're going to talk about the findings from that. We're going to talk about the concerns. The title of this talk is Fear versus Greed. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of greed. It's generating a lot of concern for many of you in here. And there's hope. So we'll talk about what that looks like, what you can do, especially if you're being disrupted by these models, and how you can find alternatives. And finally, open networks. We've talked a lot about digitization and open platforms. We're going to talk more about that as we lean into more of a solution. Okay, so as I said, we partnered with Catalyst, CNBC, and they ran an extensive amount of interviews, speaking to thousands of folks out there in the procurement role. They had at least 8 years of experience in their role, working for companies that had at least 1,000 people. So you see some large brands there, BP, DuPont, Bacardi, Aramark, large organizations. And what did they say? So the pros, I would say, are quite obvious. Flexibility, speed, choice, real time. These are extreme advantages to this marketplace concept. You can find new products. The cons are very relevant for today. So control. Are you losing all control? What about confidentiality? Are you giving your IP up to these massive platforms that seem to be dominating every industry that they put their eyes on? I mean, that's concerning. Compliance. Who are these suppliers that you're buying from? Are they vetted? Do they have high integrity in their operations or not? So what are the trade-offs? I'll go back one more. What was interesting in those interviews is they painted a picture for us as we saw the findings of a hybrid model. And they basically saying, these buyers are saying, this is what we would like to see. We would love to benefit from these global marketplace technology and the speed that it brings, but isn't there a hybrid solution that enables me to leverage these classic traditional catalogs or compliance and ensuring that the people I'm working with and working for are actually up to the standards that my company represents? Is there a hybrid? Before we get to the solution and the hope part of the talk, let's talk about the concerns. Are these marketplaces your friends? Everybody raise their hand in terms of buying. We think they're our friends, they act like our friends, but are they really for our companies? All right, here's a millennial word for you, huger. All right. There's a reason for the greed. Many of these marketplaces that are entering into our spaces on our front steps in every region are coming from the B2C world. And they have mastered, like I said, they've mastered kind of putting a mask over the complexities of the supply chain, and they make that experience very simple. But the reality is B2B is double the size of B2C. And there's a tremendous amount of greed, and many companies are chasing this opportunity down, right? What does the spin look like? Well, historically, 80% of the spin for us here in the room is strategic spin. We're spending time on real estate and massive transactions and contracts and highly complex relationships with these long-term partners. A lot of that, guys, is actually breaking off. It's moving online. All of today is talking about digital, okay? And these contracts we're finding are actually able to be procured in a marketplace setting. So what we talk about a lot at Tradeshift is 50% of the spend is moving into an e-commerce type experience. And many companies, I mean, you've seen the surveys, not just ours, but the ones that have come before us, folks are not doing it. The last poll that our last speaker talked about, the second largest statistic was no. No, I'm not working on a platform. Okay, that's going to have to change very fast. Sellers. If you're a seller in the room, represent a seller in the room. Should these marketplaces compete with you directly? Now, you're paying to be on the platform. You are paying some advertising dollars to get your products or your services made known to the audience there. Should they be competing directly with you? I want to share a quick story. A couple weeks ago, we were in New York, and we launched one of our products. I spent a lot of time working with these sellers, suppliers, actually helping them sell on Amazon for years. And one of the guys that I was talking to said recently, he was approached by the Amazon buyer. He said, I know you guys have great headphones, and we've had a university here in the States that has asked us to find some headphones for them. They're going to buy it in bulk. It's an Ivy League school there in the US. So this buyer calls the seller and says, what's your best price? Can you give me a good price or a better price, because I think we can actually get this deal? He said, should I, shouldn't I? I'm selling on the marketplace. I'm selling to Amazon wholesale. I don't really want to, but I feel like I have to. So slides the paper across, gives them a price. Didn't hear anything for several days. Come to find out, what do you think happened? Who got that business? Amazon got the business. They sold it directly. He got the price from the supplier, Amazon did, and they undercut his price, and the Ivy League school bought it directly from Amazon. Does that just like make anybody else cringe? This happens all the time with this particular partner. That's a concern. Buyers, do you have relationships or real relationships with your customers, with your suppliers as you're working with, we'll call it out, working with Amazon? Many of these retail type marketplaces. The reality is there's a chasm that's put between you and your supplier. When you sign those terms, I would highly recommend you to look at them very closely and understand just how far you are away from your customer. You can't have a relationship with them contractually. That's a concern. So the question I ask, and I recommend to you to be asking, is what's in it for you, but what's in it for them? Why? Why are they doing that? Why are they putting that chasm there? And how are you going to develop long-term business? If you're moving your suppliers to be managed onto these retail-type marketplaces, you don't have a relationship with them, so how are you going to be able to build that relationship up over time? You won't be able to. And the reality is what's happening is they can use that data to find what products are moving very fast, and they can start sourcing that stuff themselves. All right, so this is an interesting chart. Part of this conference is to provide insight. Tradeshift, an insight partner, so I'm going to try and deliver on that. But also some inspiration, and I hope that this chart will help you with that. This is from working with Amazon for quite some time. This chart is from 2011 to 2015, and the peaks there are holiday season. But what we found is that most people don't understand how big Amazon really is. Okay, these sales are Amazon's gross merchandise sales. You think of Amazon, you think of them as a retailer, and yes, they are a very powerful retailer. The blue line is their retail revenue. That's what they report to the market. All that revenue is reported. But the marketplace is gross merchandise sales. And the only thing Amazon has to report is the revenue that they gain from their marketplace, which is a small commission fee. So about, on average, 10%. So as they report their findings or their earnings or whatnot, it's actually just the 10% commission rate. So Amazon is actually double the size of what you might think. Going back to the seller, they leverage the data mining from the marketplace to find the best and fastest moving products, and that fuels their retail operation. So if you are outsourcing your supplier management to these retail type marketplaces, you have to understand that they are a retailer by trade, and you might be outsourcing your long tail, but they're still collecting data on your spend, your buying habits, and as you can see in the market, if you're in logistics, there's a lot of risk there right now. Just like Amazon built an AWS and for themselves, they turn around and selling it as a service. What if they were to build a logistics arm for themselves because maybe FedEx and UPS can't meet the demands on holidays, and Amazon is all about the customer, and they do whatever they have to do to make a great customer experience, which they do. Again, we all raise our hands. We buy from them. We love the buying experience. This is underestimated. Right now, this just came out, Amazon is offering 50% lower cost of shipping than UPS, which is known in the States as a lower cost shipping company. And I'll stop my rant here. This happened, I was having Thanksgiving a couple days ago in the US and looked up what's going on, and this is a union that was on strike on the 23rd all throughout Europe because of working conditions. So these are concerns. They're obvious concerns. The reason we bring them up is many in the room and in the market feel they have to go to this type of a solution because, quite frankly, they've innovated and they're the market leaders in that type of a space, right? But they want the opposite of what you need as a procurement leader. And as you're looking at your spend reports and you're seeing the numbers continuously increase, and that's a challenge for you because it's so easy, you don't have an alternative. We're talking about alternatives. But honestly, what if you're not in retail or manufacturing or logistics? What if you're in financial services? What if you're in more highly regulated industries like healthcare or pharma? I mean, come on, there's no way that those platforms today are actually meeting all of your needs, okay? So again, a lot of what we're hearing today is, are there alternatives? And there, unfortunately, have not been for years, but there are now. So let's talk a little bit about hope. I thought that image was innovative, but the reality is other folks have used that image today, so we'll just throw that out. Certainly not innovative. The future is here because of digitization, because of artificial intelligence, because of platforms and applications. The parts, the moving parts do exist to enable you to continue to have control and to innovate long term. The question continues to be how, like what in the world can we do, can you do to do that and take that on for yourself? So some of this is going to be some questions. Some of it's going to be a little bit about Tradeshift there at the end. I have to provide more about what we're doing because, as I've mentioned, there's not a lot of these solutions out in the market today to actually show as demonstrations. So we'll talk a little bit about ours. But the question is, what about a platform for marketplaces to facilitate, to enable all of the benefits, the speed, the transparency, the data, and if it's your marketplace on that platform, it's your data. You know, what if that were possible? So we posed this question in the survey, and I mean, I probably wouldn't be up here if we didn't have a positive response. So thankfully we did. But the buyers in that survey were saying, hey, this feels like a hybrid, which we were talking about. We were kind of asking for it. It feels like that hybrid between the catalogs, which we so love. And by the way, I have not been in the catalog world. I've been in the product listing world, and that is so much better. Hopefully I didn't lose any friends there, but it's much faster, API-driven, dynamic, real-time pricing, all these types of things, right? So how can you combine the two and offer choice? So dynamic, more dynamic. You can understand what the suppliers are up to right now, not have to wait so long to get those catalogs updated. It's suitable for indirect spend, and this is probably my favorite part, not just indirect spend, not just long tail, which is an obvious option here. We're talking about that mid-spend and the other things that can become more transactional, not just products, but services too. Travel, car leasing, MRO, that's a complicated catalog right there. Services, real estate, and these are what the buyers are saying. All right, so an open network. Raise your hand if you're on LinkedIn. A couple folks, all right. LinkedIn is a network. It's a fairly open network. You can create a profile. You have profile for companies, profile for individuals. That's an open network. Facebook is a very open network, not a business network. Platforms. So Salesforce is a great example of a platform. Many of us are probably quite familiar with Salesforce. If you're not, then folks in your organization are. Salesforce has an app exchange. So Salesforce doesn't do everything. They enable virtually everything. So they have their expertise, their CRM capabilities, and then your partners, the network, the ecosystem can be built onto that platform. That's an example of platform. Applications, artificial intelligence, all the data points from this digitization that we're talking about can benefit you in managing your long tail supply, can benefit you in understanding, say for example, I wish I had an image here, but take a tennis ball. Wherever it's being manufactured, I've seen a study that says it takes 50,000 miles for that one tennis ball to travel across the globe multiple times to end up in the hands of the tennis player before from manufacturing to when he can actually use it. 50,000 miles, how much time, how much cost? What if there's a hurricane? Where I live, there's hurricanes. What if there's a fire? You know, now with AI, Internet of Things, you can detect the weather. You can reroute in real time. So I want to challenge you to get out of the current concerns that you are having on a daily basis and start thinking about the realities in 2 to 3 years, the realities in 5 years. All of us will be living in a different type of scenario because of these technologies that are now emerging, but they will be far more established in just a few years. So get out of the current state. You're here at a conference, at a summit, and think and envision what your reality will be, what it will look like in just a few years because of here, and it does absolutely change everything. So in the 90s, one-to-one connections, EDI, still a lot of that going around being used today. One-to-many, suites, web portals, lots of things like that. But as we've also heard before I came up, these things are very well established. They're very strong, but are they flexible? Can they meet your needs? And many of these types of solutions try to meet your needs by building native solutions, customizing things for you, which is important. You're an enterprise, you're very complex, but can a single company actually develop the solutions that you need and the time that you need it? Ideally, it would be a little bit more flexible. So many-to-many enterprises. So this is part of the future, right? These things are connected. You have many-to-many networks, and that's where we're going. That's where we are. So this is getting into a bit of a pitch. Forgive that, but again, you're hearing from many other folks that are talking about these digital networks, and Tradeshift has been around for a good number of years, 8 years, growing very fast. But the reason that we're growing is that we are an app platform. An app platform built on, I hesitate to say social network, but it's built on an open network, which enables this many-to-many connection. And one thing, just to kind of help you visually understand what this is. So the iPhone, it could be Android, but think of a mobile operating system. Apple has their native apps, messaging, calendars, photos. That's what they do. They build that in their organization, their tech teams. But then you have other desires and other needs that Apple's never going to be able to deliver on. So you have an app store. We heard a little bit about an app store from Siemens, I believe, and a couple other folks today. So it's very similar in concept. Having a platform where a marketplace can live and be built and established with your rules, your needs, and then we're not under the impression that we can meet all of your needs because we just can't, certainly not in the time frame that you may need them. So the rest of your partners that you're probably already using can actually be installed as an app on the platform. So a couple things about our actual our native app. So Buy is we launched this in the US a few weeks ago in New York. Buy is a more traditional e-procurement capability. So loading in your catalogs, we need all of those things. That has to be there. We understand that. Pay is P2P, e-invoicing standard, and our network is full of suppliers, over 1 million suppliers globally, compliant globally, to enable both the procurement type of buying experience that you need, searching all across your catalogs, across others, and Pay, certainly the invoicing payment capabilities. Go is an on-the-fly, long tail. If you're at a marketing event, you need to buy something, but you want to make sure you're tracking that. It all needs to be inside of your network rather than it leaking out and showing up in expense reports later. Go is a great solution for that. And finally, Marketplace. What if all of the suppliers that you're already using, because they're working with other buyers too, otherwise it would be a monopoly and that would be way too risky for your suppliers. So they need multiple buyers. What if your suppliers were already on the network? And whenever you went to onboard them, they're already there. And the time goes from 6 months to 9 months to, I don't know, like days, minutes, weeks, a couple months? At most, a couple months. So that's what I'm actually working on there. But everything else, guys, banking partners, compliance, making sure that everything that is in your procurement networking capabilities are partners you've already been working with for years. They can build on the platform and enable your business to continue moving forward right now in that ecosystem. So I'm pretty much done. Lost all my notes here, but in summary, we've talked about the fact that the research confirms that we're going to be using marketplaces more and more in the future. There's no way around it. Whether it's for all of your strategic spend at the very top, yet to be determined, okay? Yet to be determined, but certainly at least 50% of that spend is breaking off. $3.3 some odd trillion globally, that is up for grabs, essentially. Not all marketplaces are your friends. I mean, that's clear, right? Not all of them. I do know that there are some amazing ones out there right now, and they may be perceived as your friends. The question or the recommendation is just really look very hard at the model and what the motives are, and if you're nervous about competition, there's probably a reason for that, okay? There's probably a reason. And so if you are in the position to say no, then I would say no and maybe dabble in some other areas or explore other alternatives, but definitely explore marketplace opportunities. And start sooner because you need to get that data built up so you can figure out what is truly going to be best for you long term. the new technologies will empower you to keep control. And that is exciting, and that is the hope. The digitization and how Siemens walked through how they are transforming their organization into this digital economy, if you will, is happening, is possible, and can enable you to scale globally, remain compliant, and keep that control. I don't think I've already said this, but get started with something now, because you need to start collecting that data to understand how you can continuously transform over time.